very happy with what I heard from all three of you. Also, those crossing the line should be punished. But Bishan, don't you think there was a discrimination? You have a guy who provokes. Ishant gets provoked. The provoker gets scot-free. Ishant gets punished. Wasn't there a bit of discrimination in that? Thank you.
Who will take the cattle auction question? Who wants to take the cattle auction question? Peter. Yeah. Okay.
I agree with you as far as this cattle business is concerned, auctioning. It doesn't gel with me, honestly. I'm lucky my name was not thrown in that hat. Had it been, I would have had very strong reservations. If I may be allowed or pardoned, the last time Kerry Packer's man came to me with a checkbook was in Hilton in Lahore. And we had, there was Linton Taylor, right? There were a couple of other, one Pakistani player, one Indian player. And he chucked the book at me. And he said, Bish, fill in your price. I found that pretty revolting. I threw the checkbook back at him, saying, I said, no bugger has ever put a price tag on me. You can shove it up.
Peter, do you want to step in?
Sorry?
I said, Peter was
No, and
teaching,
I would like to add here, one Indian, one Pakistani, their eyes popped out. What is the matter with the Sardar? And the timing is also right, you know. But I agree with you. This auctioning is for animals or for sick units or for buildings which are dilapidated, not for fit sportsmen.
I beg to differ, although I'm close to him.
Entitled.
Yes, I think it's called the marketplace. I think it governs the rest of our lives. Why must we expect sportsmen to be different?
I think, yeah, notwithstanding what Bish has said there, and the gentleman who asked the question, it was an odd feeling that day. I wasn't here in India for the auction. I was at home. I was at a function myself, and so I didn't. You knew it was going on. I must admit, there was a little element of feeling a little bit like a cow in amongst the rest of the brood of cattle, wondering when you were going to get drawn out, and then you found out that you'd fetched a certain price, and that seemed to be the first detail that came through. And then half an hour later, you were sort of told where it was, and you found out that you had a new home for 6 weeks. It was interesting. It was unique. I doubt we'll see anything of its like again in that format, and I think a lot of people have walked away from that with that feeling of slight uneasiness, uncertainness, and I think that's what everyone is a little bit about, the whole IPL concept at the moment. But I just think we've got to give it time. Let's not cast judgment on it just yet. Let's allow to see where it goes, and if after the first time or after giving it a fair go, it is going to impede on cricket on a global scale or really affect it badly, let's deal with that then, but not sort of be too pessimistic about it just yet. On the actual money in the game, what's enough, I don't know, everyone's got differing views, but I think having seen money come into cricket, and I'm thinking in an Australian sense, where we as a player group fought, it goes back to Kerry Packer days, and then Ian Chappell, that era, and then to Mark Taylor, who's now a Cricket Australia board director, one of the most well-respected cricket past captains in the country, fought very hard to improve player terms, not just payment, but support staff that Bish referred to that the Indians now benefit from. Having a good infrastructure around the player group to give you the best opportunity, and then player welfare post-cricket, giving you direction after cricket. That's of vital importance to allow kids to look at cricket in a very competitive world, very competitive from other sports. There's a lot more to do these days than even when I grew up, let alone when my elder statesmen here grew up. I'm not sure what they did when they weren't playing cricket, but with the greatest amount of respect, it's an ever-changing world, and there's more to do. So we've got to have incentive there, and I'm looking at it purely from a sporting perspective. In Australia, there is a threat that talented players will take other options where there's a livelihood there. So then it comes back to how much is enough, and I think there's been some amazing numbers thrown around, and it's going to be interesting to see where that settles down to eventually. I think it all will settle over time.
As a modern player yourself, Adam, do you think that the switching of loyalties, how are you going to, you said you suddenly got a new home, you have to play for Hyderabad,
Yeah, look, I moved from my home state of New South Wales. I played 10 games for New South Wales. I born and bred there, grew up, loved it with a passion. Still look at my blue cap of New South Wales with great pride, but there was an opportunity. I was sort of hit a dead end there as far as opportunity. Phil Emery was wicket-keeping and batting and captaining well. And I had to move to Western Australia for my opportunity at first-class cricket, an extended opportunity. That allowed me a chance to then get into the Australian team and have the wonderful, fulfilling part of my life that I've just completed. So I never wanted to move states, but then you get to a point and you have to make a decision. Obviously, these decisions are a little bit different. They're very much financially based, but they're opportunities too, to be a part of it, to be a part of this new amazing concept. Who knows where it will lead? I don't know. I don't have the crystal ball. But as I say, I don't want to cast judgment on anyone in that area. It's only 6 weeks. It's not that I gather they go back to their home states for all the various trophies that they play for in the domestic competitions. So I'm sure that allegiance will remain.
Hi. Question to Adam is, it was a wonderful presentation indeed, Adam. Thanks for that. The question is that over a period of time, I've been a great fan for Australian team for the kind of passion they have shown on the team over a period of years, through Alan Border, through Steve Waugh, and so many captains who have captained that team. Over a period of time, we have always seen, after being a champion, you have beaten the world, you really took the game to a different height, you've shown the world what is the game all about. Over a period of time, arrogance has taken over passion. Okay, and we have seen it happening in countries, we have seen it happening in companies, we have seen it happening for leaders. As we are in a leadership forum today, my question to you is that, how is it important for that leader to transform and hold that line between passion and arrogance?
Let me just, Adam, let me just put another question here. Is it almost like the captain of the team is the person who sets the standard for behavior, maybe, so what was okay in Mark Taylor's time or Steve Waugh's time may not be good in Ponting's, and vice versa. That the team takes its cues from a captain, whether it's about, as you rather confrontationally asked you, okay, is it about arrogance and it's not about passion? It starts becoming about arrogance. I mean,
definitely the captain of the team is the leader and is going to be held accountable for his team's behaviour. There's been some strong personalities in the Australian cricket team in recent time and throughout history. So he can't rein in every single one or be accountable for every action that is taken. But it's an interesting observation. It's not the first time that's been made mention to me or within earshot of me, and with ears this big, I hear most things. Ricky Ponting, just to give you, I feel he has really developed as a captain over time. He learns as he goes along. We lost 2005, the Ashes in England, and I thought, in a cricketing sense, what he learnt from that was outstanding. About tactically, about taking accountability and responsibility of that team. And we obviously came back and we didn't lose another test for about 16 until India knocked us over in Perth. He learned a great deal. I think from this summer he's going to learn a great deal again and move forward. But just something on Ricky, on that, about being gracious winners. That 2005 beating by England was one of the most difficult parts of certainly personally my career, but as a group, we were the first team to lose the Ashes in 18 years. That England had never even got close. And all of a sudden, it was over. It was gone. It felt like an ambush. It felt like we were outsmarted, outplanned, and outplayed, which we were. We then set about trying to get those Ashes back, and that became our focus. And we managed to do it, and we did it in 3 test matches. Obviously, the third test in Perth, we were very comprehensive. our country was very pleased. The crowd were pleased. We were sitting there. We needed 1 wicket to win the Ashes back at lunch break on day 5 of the Perth Test. A full house crowd. We knew it, the media were very excited. Everyone, we knew the country was very keen. And we in the change rooms were very keen. 1 wicket. We go out there, we get this wicket. And Ricky stopped us before we went on the field and just looked us in the eye and said, all I ask when you go out here is we be extremely gracious in victory. Let's not carry on. Let's not, get too animated in what we do. Just be respectful and understand where this means, what this means to us, how hard we've worked, but certainly be gracious in victory. And I think the team, as a general rule, did that. Individuals have to take that responsibility, but that's the directional from the leader. So I guess, again, it comes down to what you, a bit like what Peter made reference to, cultural things, what you are brought up by, the standards or what is acceptable behaviour, and then understanding that not everyone is going to be pleased by every action that happens. So you're right, we've got to keep an eye on it, and I think the team, as a general rule, do generally try to abide by a confident but respectful, not arrogant approach.
Mr. Bajaj's point about Indian players getting provoked and getting hauled up by the referees. Now we have a batting coach, a fielding coach, a bowling coach. Do we need a sledging coach for India?
Sledging coach. I think there's more spoken about sledging than what actually happens. There was obviously a lot of heated exchanges in this series, and the big event was the Sydney issue, the Harbison Andrew Simons issue that was a split second on the field and then became 2 months off the field. So I think there's a lot more said about sledging, and people always ask about sledging on the field. What's the best sledge you've ever heard? They all want to know that. What's the best comment I've ever heard on a cricket field? And it always goes back to probably the more light-hearted, entertaining ones. And just very quickly, for those that want to know the answer to that, it was a sledge that was thrown in a grade cricket game in Sydney, playing against Bankstown. Against Mark Waugh, Steve Waugh, we'd got them out, but we couldn't get Dean Waugh, the younger brother, out. And now Dean Waugh had to live up to all the expectations were on him to become another Mark or Stephen Waugh. And on this day, he was batting terribly. He could not get a run. He was playing and missing. He was getting dropped. It was atrocious batting. And our fast bowler came down to him and looked at him and said, "You must be the adopted one."
This is Vishal Chawla. Yeah. I've got a quick question. I will take the cue from Peter.
Can the person just stand up? We need to see you. Yeah. Oh, okay, sorry. Yeah.
I'll take the cue from Peter's talk that as a leaders, as we are moving into 21st century, one of the biggest things we need to look forward to is how we sustain our performance, how we become a confident player where success is expected and it's not a surprise. So my question is to Adam. I've watched Australian play for so many years, and one of the big things which I have always enjoyed is the sustained performance. So what's the message or what's the secret sauce which has really worked for Australia, which can help us as this leadership group to leverage as we go into the 21st century?
I think mainly it comes back to that expectation of success, not seeing it as a surprise and something that you over-celebrate and over-acknowledge. Realising, obviously all the planning and in a sporting sense, there's no greater feeling than in a test match where, you've got 10 other teammates, you've got support staff, you've all sat down and planned and prepared for the battle, then gone out there and actually you've basically carried out those plans, you've implemented those plans in a successful way, and then you come away with a victory. That is the most satisfying feeling for me in sport, that you've done it as a group. You've got your leader, you've got your various chain of command, and you've all at various stages had an input into it. So then you do celebrate. I've always said acknowledge success, but then, as Peter said, you celebrate and then you wake up the next day and you move on to the next issue. So that's very much India at the moment. India will have that challenge as a cricketing nation, but obviously India as a country is making huge strides, and it does have to be remembered and keep it in a relative sense. Where are we at now? Where have we come from? What have we achieved? And then plotting where we want to go to in the future. That direction is crucial, and I think our leaders, our best leaders, have done that in an unbelievable fashion. They have communicated to us the direction that we want to go in, and to be respectful of the past, but have the courage to go forward. And that's under the captains that I played under, Mark Taylor, Steve Waugh and Ricky Ponting. All three of them have been able to give us great direction. Mark Taylor in particular. I went on an Ashes tour when I was first picked in an Australian tour as the 17th player picked. I was reserve keeper. I was never going to play a test match. I was there just to hit balls to Ian Healy and learn. And Mark Taylor sat me down at the start of that tour, gave me a one-on-one speech. I walked out of that room feeling as important as Glenn McGrath or Shane Warne or Steve Waugh. That was great leadership, great direction. And I think that's something that we just come to expect success because we do acknowledge it, but then we move on to try and outdo what we've just accomplished.
Just one little thing I'd add to that Adam has less experience of, which is what I noticed about Australia coming from England is the ambition right the way through the cricket organisation. At grade cricket, 5th grade, 4th grade, 3rd grade, provincial cricket, there is ambition right the way through the organisation as well as at the top. And I think one of the reasons there's ambition at the top is because there's also ambition below.
I was just going to say that apart from other things, I'm a mother-in-law of a cricketer. I'm also a grandmother of a 5-year-old grandchild. And the film that you showed, Adam, at the end was very important to me because it showed how much you influence children and a new generation. And in this, it's been deeply troubling, and therefore I want to refer to it again. What kind of value system do you impart to these children? Is it about ads and how much money you earn on that and whether you have to drink Coke or Pepsi or what? Or the kind of values that was there earlier in gentlemen's cricket and should and does still continue. All the things you've said about how you fight and how you perform is important, and that's what children should learn. And I think the slightly diffident or let's wait and see attitude of this cattle fair business is actually going to allow children to measure cricketers by the money that is thrown at them. And it's not just that recent cattle fair, but in India, state governments shove money at the player from their state, and then they compete. Why did so-and-so get so much and the other didn't? And I think this is very important. You have much more influence than you realize. And I think you need to somehow show the next generation that money isn't a measure of every kind of talent.
Yeah. I totally agree. I think a point I'd like to make straight away, and I will say to any youngster looking at the dollar signs and not the cricket, without volunteers at club level, without administrators, without the facilities, without cricket, you are never going to get anywhere near the money that is being commanded. It's all inflated at the moment. It's unique, as I said, the IPL at the minute. But even pre-IPL, there was some great money in cricket to be earned. But without dedication and love to the game, you're not going to get anywhere near it. That's my belief, and that's the way it is in Australia. Or if you do have a one-off good season and you claim a big paycheck, you've got to back it up. If you expect then to maintain that earning level, you've got to keep backing it up. You've got to have the commitment, the desire and the determination. And that goes without saying. Once players do get exposed to this money, definitely it's about integrity, it's about how you deal with it, and that's up to the individual. I can't say there's a blanket policy for every player, but the guy that springs to mind is Sachin. Of all the world-class players that I've been fortunate to play against, to meet from other eras, very few, I would imagine, have had the expectation bestowed upon them like him, and then the adulation. And I don't know of anyone, or too many, that have handled it in better fashion than Sachin. He, of my players that I played against him from my era, I can't think of anyone that has carried themselves as well as him consistently and he has probably earned the most from the game. So I agree totally with you. I think it's a strong message. We need to educate our younger, successful cricketers to start to implement that knowledge back into lower levels as soon as possible, that there is a level of integrity, and you can pull out individual scenarios undoubtedly back in history about where people got it wrong, and people will reflect on the Sydney Test match. Did the Australian team carry on to, or go back? I remember images of Mike Gadding finger pointing with, was it Shakur Rana, the umpire in Pakistan? I remember as a youngster seeing images of that. You know, is that right or wrong when you dispute an umpire? Like, you can individual, but judging people's integrity is something you look at over a period of time, about how they've handled themselves in highs and in lows, and how consistent they were. And that's, I guess, what we look for, and what I look for is that consistency.
Peter, you had a comment?
Just very briefly, the thing that worried me much more than the market for the players, because it's the first year of that, were two things. England players all getting MBEs for winning the Ashes in 2005. Indian players, when they won the 220, getting Porsches and 250,000 rupees and all those types of things. That's the message. That's not the marketplace. That's just saying this is what you want and this is how we're going to reward you. And I think that's highly undignified in both cases.
And absolutely, and there is a marketplace that Peter made reference to, that it is a business, cricket, undoubtedly, and particularly with private ownership now, that there's players have value where they can, like a very confident, efficient executive, can boost a brand, can boost a company, can have input. So, but as I say, that won't come to you as a cricketer unless you've done what you need to do as a cricketer on the field.
You've been a wonderful entertainer on the field. We watched you play every time that we got to see you on TV. We will miss you a lot. And we hope to see you on the other game, but not on the official ones. On the point of sledging, sometimes one wonders whether the players are actually sledging, or do they actually own arms and ammunition to go to war between two countries? And do you need a United Nation to do a peacekeeping force to be sent there? My question is on future of cricket. We do understand that there are various formats that are being now played and being used. What happens to games that are not seen in the rest of the world? We meet people from the rest of Europe, we meet people from the United States or North or South of America who hardly understand this game. What are players like you and boards trying to do to expand this game into other parts of the world?
It's a good point, and that's where I see 2020 cricket as a vital product or component of that sort of trying to grow the game in countries that are less familiar with it. Obviously, China is just on the rampage in every capacity, and that would be a great market to try and get into. And I think a shortened version of the game has got to far outweigh sort of trying to sit someone down that's never seen the game, say, come and watch a game of cricket for 5 days, and at the end you probably won't have a result. We won't know if there's a winner or a loser. That doesn't sound overly appealing to me. So it's a great way to introduce people to the game. It's going to open the doors to a new audience. So I think, as I say, administered well, T20 will be able to enhance the game on a global scale. I'd be interested to see what you guys both think about that. Do you think, with your reluctance of 2020, Bish, do you think that it can be used in a positive fashion?
How much positive fashion can you use a period of hour and a half, really? Now, one thing which comes to my mind...
I'll take that as a no.
Hang on, just a minute. One thing which I'd like to ask the gathering here, admittedly, we are all in a rush to forge ahead, and that is how T20 was born. But I'm not too sure if we are giving any thought to the process of human growth. It takes 12 years for a young kid to pass out from school. Why can't we do that in, say, 2 or 3 years? If we are in such a massive rush. And human growth, or our cricketing excellence, or our academics, they go hand in hand. You can't expect where one part of your development is complete, whereas the other two are lagging far behind. And education, particularly, in my opinion, has a very positive role to play in the success of any sportsman, be it cricket, golf, tennis, football. Education is a must. And here we are, or the ICC or the BCCI, are trying to give us impression, right, stuff the education, let's get on with it as fast as we can. And I've only heard about this rat race business, that even if you win it, you're still a rat.